Consider that we have a new table called as sample superstore, and now we are going to start do some analysis on the table. And before doing any analysis, it is a common practice to do some data profiling to understand more about the data type, schema, and other basic statistics. Let us do a top 10 star query on the new table and see what is the basic schema. So this is the table which we are looking into, which is the sample superstore table, and it has got multiple columns. And one of the important thing to understand is that what are the data type of different columns in the table, because based on that only we will be able to use different functions which belongs to certain data types on the table. So normally in SSMS what we does is we come to Object Explorer, we expand the database option, and we'll go to particular database in which the table is present. In this case, the database is questions database. So we'll click on plus sign next to questions database, then expand tables option, and again we will scroll down and go to that particular table, which is the sample superstore table, and expand it. Again we will see one more option called as columns, and now we can see that the different columns present in the new table and the data type to which that particular column is mapped. But this is a tedious process once we are in an actual development environment, because we will have hundreds and hundreds of tables, and it is not a good practice to scroll through the entire database and find the table and different columns and their data type. In that case, what we can do is we can write a query to get the data type of all the columns in a table in SSMS using three different tables which are already present in the database or in the system database itself. So these are the three columns which we can use to write a query to get the data type of every columns in a table. And in this video, we will see how to write the query. And before writing the query, let us do a select star on the three tables and see what these three tables contains. We'll start with the columns table. So execute this, and we have a table with multiple columns, and we are going to use only two columns from this table. The two columns are names and the user underscore type underscore id column. So these are the two columns which we require in our final query. And from the sys.type columns, sorry, sys.type table, we are going to use another two columns which are name column and the user underscore type underscore id column. So these are the two columns which we require from the sys.types table. And in the name we can see that these are the different data types that can be present in a database, and this is the particular id to which that particular database data type is mapped. And finally we will use one system.tables table which we will use in a where clause within the final query. And this is the final table, which is the sys.tables, which consists of multiple columns, and we only want only one column from this table, that is object id column. And name column also we will use, but in the output or in the where clause within the final query we will use only object id. But in order to filter that, we will use name column also, because this name is the name of different tables within the database, and the object id column corresponds to that particular id of that table. So these are the two columns which we will use from these tables. And now let us start writing query for the same. And this is the first part of the query which we have to write with the system.columns table and system.types table. So here we have selected two columns in our final output, which are column.names and type.names from the system.columns table and system.types table. And this is taken from the two tables, and we are creating an inner join with the two tables. And the inner join is based on the two columns which I have initially mentioned, which are user underscore type underscore id from the sys.columns table and user underscore type underscore id from the types table. And now if we run this query, we will get all the columns from the database and their corresponding data type. It is not only that particular table which is the sample superstore, but instead if we run this query now, we will get output such that we will have a column called as column name and second column called as data type, but This output contains more number of column names than we were looking for, which means this output contains all the columns from that particular database, not only the sample superstore but all the tables and all the columns from that particular database. But what we have to do here is we have to write a where clause for the initial query such that we filter the columns only for that particular sample superstore table. For that, we will use the third table, which is the system dot tables table. So here we will write a where clause based on the object ID column from the sys dot columns table. That is, we create a where clause on columns dot object ID equal to object ID we are selecting from the sys dot tables, and the name should be sample superstore. That is, if I run this query alone, we will get the object ID for sample superstore table from the database. So this is the object ID which corresponds to the object ID of the particular input table, that is sample superstore. Now we are creating a where clause where we want the columns only for which column dot object ID equal to the object ID of the sample superstore table. Now if we run this query, we will get the output such that the columns are only from the sample superstore table. Now if we see the output, we can see that we have 21 columns in our output. We will run both the queries at a time so that we can compare the results. So we'll paste it here. So we'll select from the beginning, starting from select top 10, and we will completely run the query and we will get the top 10 result as well as the final output where we have the column name and data type corresponding to that particular column name. As you can see, we have row id in the table, and row id corresponds to n varchar, and order id is also n varchar, and the third column is order date, and the data type for that particular column is date time 2. And similarly, going down, we can see that we have different columns called as sales, quantity, discount, etc. And here in the input table also, that is our new table also, we have columns such as sales, quantity, discount, etc. And all the columns have been mapped to different data type depending upon our requirement. Now it is very easy to get this output based on our requirement and also for different tables. What we can do is, if we want the data type mapping for a new table, the only thing we have to change in this query is that only change the only change the table name in the subquery within the where clause. So here it is sample superstore. Now consider that I wanted the data type mapping for all the columns from orders table. So what I can do is, I only wanted to change this name, that is orders. Now if I run this query, I will get all the columns and their data type mapping for orders table. So we can see that I had only three columns for the particular table. So ID, price and order date. So the data type corresponding to that are int, in and date. Similarly, we can get multiple information using the three table, which are system.column, system.type and system.tables. Hope this video was helpful. If you like this video, subscribe our channel. Thank you.